Hello, welcome. Thanks very much for taking the time out to look at our webinar. I just want to say that there's lots of uncertainty out there at the moment. It's quite scary times, so I hope you guys are all coping okay and trying to smile through these times. We've never been here before, so what we're going to talk about today is just how to secure your business for the future and what your critical actions are and what you can do to help survive. So UHY are here to support our clients. We understand there's so much information out there. It's very overwhelming. You're not alone. To support, we put together a panel of experts to cover the key topics we feel we're causing the most concern and sleepless nights. Our aim is to provide the information to help you survive and prosper. This is completely uncharted territory for us as well. We've assembled this webinar quite quickly and we hope that it's useful. What we've done is we've pulled together some questions and things that we've had from some of our clients at the moment, but we want to open up the floor to you guys to post your questions as well. You can post them on the live chat with the webinar. There's loads to get through, so we're going to try and get through as much as we can in an hour. Your questions will all be answered. They might not be answered in this session, but we might do another webinar or follow up in a separate way. So don't worry, ask away, and we'll try and get back to you as best we can. So I'd like to introduce the experts that we've got online. So we've got Equip, so we've got Mark and Harry. Equip are specialist consultants that focus on business resilience and growth for SMEs. We've got UHY, we've got Stuart, who's a partner at UHY. And a managing director of UHY Corporate Finance. And we've got Emma, who's the managing director of HR Service Centre. And she's been advising her clients on all HR matters arising from the coronavirus. So I'm going to kick things off and hand over to Harry. So Harry, your business, you help businesses get ahead of the curve by implementing tried and tested commercial systems. And you work through the mindset and behaviours of the leadership team. So I just want you to see if you can set the scene and give us your thoughts on what the situation is globally.
Okay, so thank you very much, Marie. It's very weird when you're looking at stuff and you can't see yourself, you're off to the side there a bit. But as you said, these are uncharted, uncertain times. I'd first like to say thanks to everybody who's listening to the webinar. Won't go over the bit you've said already, but first point for this for us is things are different. And three things to keep in mind, which UHY are already doing with this, which is when you hit this level of change, first thing is look after yourself, look after your team, and then look after your clients. It's as simple as that, really. Our bit, and we've got slide one here then. So our bit is really, in this part of the message, it's sometimes you just need to slow down a bit to speed up. Sometimes then you just need to get a different perspective. And so that's what this first slide is. Everyone at the moment, when you're at home, is talking about COVID-19 and how you can't get any toilet roll, those sorts of things. So basically, there's been a massive shock to our business, our economy, and the markets. So the first thing for business owners then is get yourself a bit of space, and in that space, start thinking about the effects that the aftershock effects that are happening because of a health scare. So get yourself out of the health scare mode if you can, in business space, into what's it doing to the economy, what's it doing to the markets, and then what will that do to our business. So that's the first slide. Next one then. So basically, we've been through this already in 2008, as consultants, and we had a 5-year plan then to work through with our clients and everyone else we could get hold of, giving them a map of the journey. So we don't know all of the content, all of the things that are going to happen, but we sort of know what's going to happen at what stage. Now, businesses who've been in business since 2008 will get that. We've been through a big old W-shaped long recession. So in that space, first message then for the business owners out there is we're pretty much in pre-recession, or we'll call it pre-session because that sounds nice and it goes with the recession and succession bit. So in there then, the first thing is we don't know at the moment if we're going to hit recession or not because the indicators haven't come out yet. We don't know if we're in recession, whether that's a V-shaped recession. That's change slide, please. Yeah, so we're in that first bit where we're falling off a cliff. So we're probably going to go into recession. Next slide. Yeah, I've got my glamorous assistant Mark here, and you can't get the staff basically. So we don't know whether we're going to go into recession, then we're going to bounce straight out again. That would be nice. Next slide. We don't know whether we're going to go into recession, and this is called a U-shaped recession. And I heard someone describe this a bit like falling in a bath. You know, as a spider, you fall in a bath. It's very slippery slope down. It takes quite a while to get out again, and it's slippery up the other side. So that's a U-shaped recession, a painful V. And the next one. Or are we going to do a dead cat, which is basically we fall off a cliff and then it bounces like a dead cat. So we can be in harsh economic and business times for a long time. We don't know where we're going with that, but we do know that one of those things is going to happen. So the first bit for you guys then is get yourselves into the space of thinking ahead, acting more like the market and less in the detail, more in the what's going to be going on in 3 months' time. We'll help you with that in the following months, because we know when we know each of these things is starting to happen, what to do next. And I think that's me.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you. And Harry, even. And thanks, Mark, for doing the slides. So as Harry's saying, is we don't know what's going to happen in the long term, but there is things that we can do right now that can protect our business and become more resilient. Now, we've split this webinar into critical actions and immediate actions, because unfortunately everything needs to be done right now. You've got the critical actions, which are real, let's try and survive, and these mainly focus around cash and HR, your staff. So we've got Stuart, who's our corporate finance expert. Stuart's our first port of call in terms of when it comes to assessing your business and your cash position. Now, Stuart has been absolutely inundated with support over the last couple of days, and he's here to provide guidance on the government-backed schemes and other forms of lending that can be useful during these tough times. So, Stuart, do you want to just start off with saying what you're seeing at the moment with your clients?
Yeah, of course. I'd say at the moment there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of confusion, and in some cases there's a lot of panic. You know, many businesses have seen shops shut, production halt, services cut, and that's creating a significant financial strain on businesses who may only have a few months worth of cash, if they're lucky, in the bank. So many clients are, I think confused is the right word. They're not sure what to do, and they're not sure who to go and speak to really, or how they go about getting their hands on some money or taking advantage of a lot of the information they've heard over the last week or so.
Okay. So, I mean, as you've just touched on there, I mean, there's heaps of information out there, and I found when I was talking to people that they just don't know what to do. So what's the most common questions you're being asked at the moment?
At the moment, the two most common areas that are taking up the majority of the conversations centre around the business interruption loan scheme and the job retention scheme. In particular, business owners are trying to understand how they go about the application process, whether they're entitled to the money, where do they go, who do they speak to. And I'd say it's important for our listeners to understand that these schemes were only set out last week. The government, the revenue, the banks have yet to fully deal with their internal processes, and that's going to take a little time. You know, we know, for example, the job retention scheme isn't likely to pay out until the end of April, and we know that the HMRC's portal is not yet live. We also believe it may take 6 to 12 weeks to successfully secure lending through the business interruption loan scheme. So a lot of the conversations I'm having are trying to manage people's expectations and give them an understanding of whether or not they are entitled to some of those opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, okay. I see you just mentioned the job retention scheme, which I imagine has been massive for a lot of businesses out there. Who were originally looking just to make full redundancies, that now be able to plan a little bit more further down the line. So I'm actually going to go to Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
So from your perspective, what do you think our listeners need to think about when it comes to job retention scheme?
Okay, so I think to maximise from the job retention scheme when it becomes available, you need to think now about who your key people are in the business and how you can keep them working. So who is critical to keep your business going over the next sort of 6 to 12 weeks? And then look at the staff that can't work from home or where there is no work for them to do, either because the production has dropped off or the orders aren't there and there's simply nothing that they can do, even if they wanted to work. Those are the staff that you should be identifying for furloughing. So it's not looking at who's off sick, who doesn't want to work. It's a business decision and a strategic decision for the business owners to make. And that's, in my opinion, one of the critical things that you should be thinking about at this point in time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Emma. Okay, so I think, and the other part of support that Stuart mentioned, you said about the business interruption loans.
Yeah.
Can you just talk through what people need to think about when applying for these loans?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'd say to our listeners out there that they really need to understand that the scheme itself is not a giveaway. It doesn't entitle you to lending. There are no guarantees. A lot of the wording associated with the scheme suggests that in order to qualify, you would have to prove that your business would qualify for a loan, let's say under normal trading conditions, so pre-coronavirus. So if you've got a loss-making business, if you've got an inability to offer enough security, the banks are likely to turn you down. And it's the banks at this point in time that will have the decision as to whether or not you qualify. For example, some of the things we're seeing from the banks, the likes of Metro, Santander and Barclays, are currently only offering the scheme to existing clients. And Barclays in particular are preferring to put clients or their customers through traditional lending schemes rather than the business interruption scheme. So it's worth looking into. It's worth speaking to your bank about it. But there are no guarantees, and the reality is it's likely to take some time to get your hands on the cash.
Okay. So, you know, we've covered the job retention scheme, we've covered the business interruption scheme. I mean, it sounds quite difficult, some of this stuff. I mean, what else is there that that's available that people can do?
Well, I think you've mentioned the job retention scheme. It's probably worth just quickly touching on that one again, just to let people know that once they've been through the right processes in terms of identifying the right staff that need to be furloughed, there is a process you're going to have to flow through in order to make a claim to the revenue. There is a portal that's due to be set up, which isn't set up yet, where you'll have to upload information, and there will be some kind of checking process by the revenue before they reimburse you. And again, it's not expected that that reimbursement will come through until the end of April. In the meantime, all businesses have been given a VAT holiday over the next quarter. In essence, that cash is being lent back to the businesses in order to support the payment of their staff whilst the revenue sort out the job retention scheme. Okay. There are time to pay arrangements in place where you can defer corporation tax, PAYE, other VAT liabilities. For the smaller firms out there, there's extensions to small business rates relief. There are grants for those qualifying for small business rates relief and for those in certain industry sectors that have suffered most, such as hospitality, for example. And there are various other more minor solutions, statutory sick pay changes, support for the self-employed. There's currently a proposal being tabled to support freelancers and those with personal service companies. We're expecting to hear more on that this week. And don't forget, there's the traditional routes to finance.
Okay, brilliant. I think regarding the job retention scheme, we've just had a question that's come through about whether owner directors can take advantage of that as well. Do you mind answering that as well, Stuart?
I can give it a go, and the simple answer is no, or that's what we understand. Owner directors, depending upon how they're paid, are often paid a basic salary and a dividend anyway. Dividends are not subject to PAYE and therefore don't fall under the remit set out. But also it's important, and Emma will be able to confirm this, that the staff have to be furloughed. And if you've got a director running a business, I can't see how that can happen.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think that's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I think maybe when these proposals that are tabled to support the freelancers and those with personal service companies, that may extend beyond I suppose those types of people, and capture lots of business owners that do take their income by way of a basic salary and dividends, but we don't know yet.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned that there's a lot of payments that you can defer in terms of tax payments and things. Now, do you recommend so things like VAT, corporation tax, to help with your cash position? Now, a question's just come through about whether we recommend deferring PAYE, for example, and what the knock-on effect is of deferring all these tax payments.
Well, the knock-on effect is you're going to have to pay them at some point in the future. I think what's important for the listeners out there is they plan. So they understand their cash position, they understand what's going to happen to their business over the next 2 or 3 months, and they make a decision based on whether or not they want to, keep staff, whether or not they want to be there to be able to support future income in the future and have sufficient resource in the bank to be able to capture orders that come through once we get through the other side of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then with this, the things that you've mentioned, I mean, how easy is it to apply for these things?
So the business interruption loan scheme, you can talk to your bank in the first instance if you bank with one of those lenders that qualify. If you don't, you can talk to us. We can support. We have access to all the lenders and we have access to all other traditional lenders. Grants, it's expected that the local authorities will write to all businesses that qualify for small business rates relief. So they will make you aware of the application process. And the time to pay arrangements is very much a matter of calling the revenue, speaking to your accountant to call the revenue. And as long as you do that generally in advance of that debt being due, it's a matter of having a discussion about payment terms.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think to sort of wrap up, I guess there's so much to take into on board. I mean, what's your one piece of advice that you'd give to businesses regarding their cash position?
I think I've touched on it a minute ago, and it's basically to keep calm and don't make rash short-term decisions. It's going to be easy for people to dive into survival mode and cut costs back, make redundancies, trim the business back to their bare bones. And of course, there's going to be a need for that. But the challenge is the business is going to come out the other side, and your business wants to be in a position to be able to make use and service all of those opportunities that come through once we get past the worst of this. And if you're clever and well positioned, you could really benefit, because many businesses will not think that way. And that's really where the guys from Equip come in. They're able to help you understand what you need to pivot your business. They'll help you retain key talent. They'll help you increase short-term production and efficiency and effectiveness, as well as providing independent support for the business owners. So it's striking the right balance, getting the right mindset. I think that word mindset was used at the start of this presentation. So, talk to your support network, talk to your friends, your families, your colleagues, your professional advisors, because there's a whole host of brilliant and talented people around you that can add great value.
Yeah, Yeah, okay, yeah, I completely agree. So I think going over to Emma then, you know, we're talking about people being panicked and worried, and you know, I imagine you've been absolutely inundated with calls as well on people's been worrying about not paying their staff. How can people avoid panicking about HR?
Well, you're right about that. I've never fielded so many calls in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it is a very challenging time. But just to give you a sort of flavour of how the concerns have changed over the last 3 weeks. The first week, clients were ringing up wanting to know about how do I make SSP payments, who's got to self-isolate, what are they going to be paid. Last week, it was all about, I haven't got any money, I need to lay people off, I'm going to have to make people redundant, because businesses were facing the very real possibility that they were about to fall off the cliff. With the government announcement on Friday evening, this week, it's all been about what's the job retention scheme? How can I access this funding? When is it going to be available to me? How can I keep how do I furlough my staff? What does furloughing mean? So you can see that every single week has brought a fresh sort of a set of challenges and questions to deal with, and many of the government agencies are just simply running to catch up with the government's decision making. So what can I say to you about that? Hold tight. If you can't press the pause button on your business for the next 3 weeks, then make sure you've got your key workers identified and red circled, and make sure that they've got the capacity to work from home if at all possible. Do your bit to help the common cause and to support the home working, and make use of the technology that is available to you to help keep in touch with your staff and build your online work community so people don't feel so isolated when they're working from home.
Okay, that's some brilliant advice there, definitely. Okay, so if anyone's contemplating redundancies, reducing hours, cutting salaries, what's your advice around that?
So my advice on that would be, if you're thinking of any of those things, and that is probably at the forefront of many business owners' mind, identify the key staff, those whose knowledge or skills are absolutely essential to keeping your business going, and those who can work from home. If they can't work from home and there's no other work, then consider furloughing those staff only. If you can press the pause button on your services and your business offering for 3 weeks, then do so. And if you have to, once the job retention scheme ends and we know where we are, then you can consider laying off staff and making redundancies. But I think the whole point of the business retention is don't do it now. There is funding available, so hang on in if you can, make use of the funding that's available, and then only after that's run out, take a look then and decide if you need to make permanent decisions like redundancies or layoff.
Okay, okay. So when you're talking about the job retention scheme, we've just had a question come in about what kind of where we've got a template letter to explain to staff who are going to be on these schemes. Do you have anything that you would be able to provide our listeners that we can do after this webinar in terms of what wording they can use, or is it best they just contact you directly?
They can contact me directly, but I'll also make the resource available. So we do have a letter that you can send to the staff and a furlough agreement, because in furloughing staff, it's important to remember you're changing their employment status from employed to furloughed. So they cannot do any work while they're furloughed, and the government is only subsidising 80% of their salary. You can add to the 80% and top it up to 100%, but you're not obliged to. The important thing is you have to get their agreement, A, to be furloughed because it changes their employment status, and B, to reduce their salary to the 80% for the time that they are furloughed for. So yes, we have an agreement that we can issue to you, and if you are in that situation, then there is a template available.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Emma. Okay, so it's important for business owners to plan for the future, as well as dealing with the short-term business critical issues they've got to do now. What's your advice on building an agile workforce?
So building an agile workforce is one that's free to make autonomous decisions. It's disciplined in how it conducts its work. You communicate well with others, and it's resilient and collaborative. So this is perhaps an ideal opportunity for us all to explore a more agile workspace than we've traditionally operated in, because we've got no choice. If we are going to survive this, and our businesses are to survive in the long term, then necessity is the mother of invention, and in this case, we will have to find a way through it. So empower your teams to work remotely, support them in doing so, set them some parameters for decision making, and make sure that you collaborate and share your good practice and strengthen your remote working communications, and we will get through this.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. And I'm just going to ask you the same question that I asked Stuart earlier. If you could give one piece of advice regarding HR, what would it be?
Be flexible. Things are not the same, and every day is bringing new challenges. Think about, how can I do this? Don't think it can't be done. And be compassionate where you can. People are living in very trying times. Be disciplined yourself in your work time and establish a routine of sorts, but be flexible in that. Keep communicating. We're all in this together, and we will get through it.
Brilliant, thank you, Emma. So we've sort of touched on the critical business security actions. We're now going to move the webinar on to more the immediate actions, really. So these are sort of summarised actually quite nicely by Harry when we had the prep call for this webinar, where he just summarised it and said the tactics are to defend, retain and prosper. So Harry, would you like to just explain exactly what that phrase means in the context of a real business?
Yeah, sure. But I'm sort of in awe, really, of Emma and Stuart. I think we're going to come and get coached by Emma. Really, that was brilliant. So the first bit in there, yeah, large fee. So if we can, I think we've got the slide, haven't we? If we've got that the next slide, the market slide, is that right? Okay. Yeah. So the point here then is really, as we were talking at the start, we're in pre-recession. We're probably going to go into recession. So the firms that would prosper out of this are the ones that can get their heads for a time out of the day-to-day and into the long term. So what you've heard from Stuart and what you've heard from Emma is there's critical stuff that needs to happen right now to secure your business. Then we can move on a few weeks, a couple of months, whatever. Now we're in the space of, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's going to be one of 3 or 4 things. So the idea there is, as soon as we know what's likely to happen, we can start to make plans. And again, the bit in there is to make 2 or 3 plans, which we may talk a bit about later. But the defend, retain and prosper bit is the stuff you're doing right now. The critical stuff is part of the defend. And in here, this is, as Stuart was saying, this is sort your funding out, sort your people out, then start to sort reshaping your business out. And at that stage, it's just about getting income, just about getting money in, keeping money in, and like Emma said brilliantly, review your capabilities. The next bit then, the retain bit then, this is the bit that UHY have done absolutely fantastically, and that's the client-based support. So basically servicing and loving your clients, because as you guys have said, and you guys out there know, everyone's in turmoil, everyone's running around, and everything we can do to help each other, as Emma was saying, will help us all. So the retain bit then, as we say, as UHY have done, they've gone through their client list, they've worked out who are in need of help now and who will be in need of help in a short time, and who are, you know, and what services they'll need. And one of those services was to do this webinar. And even I've learned stuff, as you will. I've learned stuff off of listening to Stuart and then Emma. We run a small business too. So that's the retain bit. And then the prosper bit is, okay, let's take a breath. We may start to understand if we're in recession, and if we are, what type it is, then we can start to work out, right, how do we reshape? And this is that the immediate actions slide, I think, is the next one. Have we got it in there? Is that next? That's it. So the immediate actions then, the prosper bit is, right, okay, seriously start to think about what's going to happen in the market, what's going to happen in your markets, what products have you got that fit for the future, and what products don't fit. So it's a bit like the staff, but up a level. What products are going to work, what products are not going to work, and for some people their business may not work anymore. And so that's back to Stuart and Emma to talk about stuff. But in that space, the reshaping bit is, as Emma said, this is an opportunity. It's a pain and it's massively emotional for everybody, but it is an opportunity. So in there, you may find what is the core thing that you do brilliantly. What's the thing you guys do where you add massive value? And then the flip side of that, are there people out there that could use the core thing that you do that is brilliant, that adds massive value? Markets you may have thought you would address, products you thought you might use, but you never got around to it because things were busy enough as they were. So that's the sort of defend bit, and then the prosper, sorry, and the retain and prosper. The prosper is taking a deep breath, auditing your business, going through your capabilities, going through the markets and products, and then starting to plan for the future, and as quickly as possible get some of those things in place to start moving forward.
Okay. That's brilliant. I think it's nice to have a bit of a almost structure around this, because I'm finding a lot of clients, well, I'm feeling the same as well. You just panic and there's so much going on. So it's nice to have it almost sort of ring fenced into certain boxes. So you can go, right, I'll deal with that first, and then I'll deal with this, and then I'll deal with that. So Emma has already spoken about building an agile workforce, and Stuart's mentioned about not going overboard in terms of survival mode. So I'm going to bring Mark in now. Hi, Mark. You can speak. How do you find a balance between the survival mode and actually building for the future?
Yeah, well, thanks. And thanks everyone for the contributions so far. Some real words of wisdom from Emma and Stuart. So just echoing Harry's sentiments. And I think really a lot of the context around that has been nailed. The thing is, this is all about mindset and behaviours now. It's not about rushing in, making knee-jerk decisions. Really, what's required is a good balanced perspective. So there's the day job to be done, sure, and that's sort of the operational stuff, but it's also having that perspective of the long term as well, and making sure that your judgment doesn't get clouded around that. So as Emma was saying, you know, use your friends and family. Be careful of what the input is that you're taking in. You know, if you're on social media, it's all doom and gloom. There are always opportunities that pop out of this. So getting the balance right is really important. Just avoid the short-term only view, and use two lenses for making decisions. One is really about, you know, it's thinking through things clearly, and it's also how do you feel about stuff, and it's using the balance of those two things, not just using one.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I think in terms of so, you know, going back to Harry and how he positioned the session, we've got stuff that we just can't control right now. Do you recommend, Harry, whether you align your business with the market or the economy?
And oh, we've got our perspective one up. So yeah, market or economy, and this is a general theme with lots of threads that cross over. So market or economy is aligned with the market. How do we do that? Start to think like a market does. Oh, there we go. So the align with the market one is most people will be aligning with the economy. So what does that mean? Do you remember the last recession? The one that struck me was there was an announcement one day, are we in recession? Yes, no. Is it a big recession, little recession? Don't know. And then one day there's some figures came out and said that the mini plant in Coventry was shutting down, laying off its 500 workers or something like that. So that day for me, I remember, you know, hearing that on the news. The point there was the economy got it. Yeah. So when Woolies closed, when car plants that are German owned shut their factories down, that's when we know we're in recession, in the depth of recession. And that's cool, but that was the economy. The markets had already priced that in. The markets were 3-6 months ahead. They're looking to not where are we now, but where will we be? And that's the focus for you guys. We would recommend, and that's what we help people with. But in that space, start to look at not where are you now, not where's your market now, but where will it be in 3-6 months' time.
Okay, so I mean, you guys, I mean, you work with quite a few SMEs, and you've actually helped them do this. Can you tell us exactly how business owners can do that?
Very simply, again, remember from the last recession, there are simple things like you get the newspaper, you open the newspaper, and you take a green pen and a red pen, and with the red pen you circle all the negative stuff, and with the green pen you circle the positive stuff. And if the red stuff, like now, is much worse than the green stuff, we know where we're going. But it's talking about, in markets, or they'll call it a delta, which is the change. So you're looking for the change. So you're looking for, not is the rate of unemployment really high, but is the rate of unemployment starting to fall? So it's the change we're looking for. So again, the other one, they used to say, like with London or a big city, how many cranes are there? If there's lots of cranes, then that means that part of the economy is growing, and that will flow through. If there's not many cranes, then that part of the economy is not doing very well. So there are more indicators like that. What we'd suggest in that space for the market stuff is, again, Google, market experts or whatever. There are people there like Ray Dalio and others who are market experts and industry experts. They will give commentary on where are we in the economic cycle. That's their job. Google them, start to get a bit familiar with how the market is looking at these things. That will help to get your head in a different space, because you've got your personal space, then you've got your business space, then you've got the market space.
Okay, so it's about looking at the indicators then, and trying to anticipate it as opposed to wait for the economy to react.
That's it, yeah, be at the front foot, not the back foot. Now, we'll send out some stuff over time as we start to get a head around how to go online and do all this sort of business differently. But that's it, yeah, look for the indicators, have a little look on Google. Don't be afraid of the economic jargon. Don't be afraid of the economic stuff. There's a slide we put in there, which is the economic clock, and that's the basis of that, aligned with the market slide. All it's saying is the market's ahead of the economy. The economic clock one, just Google it. And there's loads of brilliant articles out there, and that will just explain how our economy follows the cycle, just like everything else, so that would be a piece of advice.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So it feels quite negative, some of this stuff. So I was going to pass over to Mark actually and just say, what's the real opportunity here? Is there any?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, quite simply, accept this as the new normal and own it. Because there's no point dwelling on the past and how things were. This is the reality now. We don't know how this thing's going to pan out, apart from one thing, and there is going to be a huge amount of change. And that's going to factor into many things, societal change, and this is going to go on for some period of time. So if a lot of the sheeple out there really are thinking, when things get back to normal in a couple of weeks, it won't. I'd love to be wrong, but it won't. What's been working in the past may not be working in the future. So this is the opportunity now to really pivot, and this goes back to what Emma was saying, pivot your proposition. What are you really good at that's going to be relevant now, and more relevant now than it was before, and stop doing the stuff that won't be relevant. This is a game changer. It's a huge, huge game changer. So own it, accept it, move on. Don't try to drag the past along and look for making sense of what used to work before. So that would be the biggest bit of advice, is quite simply own it.
Okay, yeah, that's a great bit of advice, I think, because there's a lot of things that we can't control at the moment, which is what Mark was saying and Harry was saying earlier. And I think it's good to take control and own of the things that you can control, and try and influence where your business can go. So Mark, how can businesses really take advantage of the opportunities that you're outlaying there? How can they prepare for this?
Okay, so Harry started to talk a bit about this as well, and it's start to plan for different scenarios. The rug has really been pulled from under our feet, and we've been thrown into this very, very quickly. So what are the likely scenarios? You know, and using what Harry was talking about at the beginning is, you know, if it's a V-shaped recession, what does that mean? If it's a U-shaped recession, if it's an L-shaped, and of course, if things miraculously do bounce back very, very quickly, then great, but what's the plan? So start to have scenario-based planning. The only real bit of advice that I'd give around all of this is just don't use hope as a strategy. That would be the biggest problem that you could have.
That I completely agree with that. That's really well said, Mark, definitely. Okay, so I think, you know, we're talking about the plans, the future. I've just had a question that's come in actually for Harry. I mean, this is it's a bit of a how long the piece of string, but I mean, Harry, can you predict anything what's going to happen in the long term? Is there anything you can say about where you think the market's going to go?
And that's a brilliant question, and the answer is yes. And the answer is, as we said right at the start, quite ineloquently, but at the start, we're in pre-session, so we're not in recession yet because the figures haven't come out to actually say we're entering recession. But the way the markets and everything else have dropped, let's assume, you know, as Mark said, the brilliant thing is have a plan A and B at least, if not C. So therefore, we're probably going to go into recession. And again, this is all about language. And it goes back to what all of the guys have been saying before. In that space, we can talk about recession or we can talk about recovery. So in the slides, as we've set them up, we talk about recession and recovery. So the first bit is, yeah, we're probably going to go into recession. Brilliant if we don't, but we probably are. Then it's just down to, right, is this a really nasty L-shaped recession where things keep falling, they hit the floor and they don't move for a long time? Is it a recession where it's a bit less worse than that? This is the U-shaped one where things fall, we turn along the bottom, then we bounce up. Or is this one of these ones where actually all this action's been brilliant, all the health focused stuff's really working, all the market focused stuff and the business focused stuff, the support Stuart's been talking about is really working, so we bounce up quick. We don't know, but we do know that we're going to go through pre-session, recession, and then recovery, and then the success bit for us. So our gig is to help you guys understand a bit of when those things might be happening. This is what we did through the last recession. And for you guys, again, to be in a position that when we know it's a V shape or a U shape, you've got a plan in place to press the button and do something. And like Emma said, the staff are very important. And like Stuart said, the funding important. That's why we've got them down there, because those and clients are the critical things. But that's how we can walk through it. What's the pace of that? I don't know, and I wouldn't claim to advise you. As we've said, there are guys out there that predict the market, like the Harry Dents and the Ray Dalios and other guys like that. They're brilliant people. We've got our own people like that we talk to, and it may be in a future webinar we can get some of that info from them. But yeah, take control yourself. Get as good as info as you can on it. Nobody knows, and if anyone says they do know, they're talking probably an untruth.
You kept it clean, Harry. Well done.
I tried really hard.
Okay, so in terms of what you've just said then, is how should businesses rethink their proposition?
Yeah, and I think we covered this one earlier. This is our slide B, isn't it, Marie? This is the one you did on immediate actions. That's the first bit, and it's what Mark was saying and what Stuart was saying and what Emma was saying. Spend some time and effort on a structured plan and work through. So there's one of the guys that you know and we know well is Tom over at Footprint Digital, and they're digital wizards. They do all the digital stuff. That's my technical expertise. In that space, I was talking to Tom the other day. He's already done Stuart's advice. He's gone through, he's sorted the funding out, he's done Emma's advice, he's sorted the HR out. He's now drawing up some cash flow models and some scenarios on, do they lose 10% of their staff? Do they lose 50% of their staff? And then maybe, I don't know, do they gain 20% of, staff, customers? Do they lose 20% of their customers, 50% of their customers, or do they actually gain customers? So have those scenarios in place. That's the, as Mark was saying, that's the most important thing. Go through a rigorous process, which again, we've got a process to do that, but go through the processes on that slide before, and then put it in place and have some plans in place.
Yeah, I think the scenario planning is a great shout. Looking at things like exactly what you said. If you lose 10% of your clients, what happens with your business 20%, 30%, and how can you reposition your business to cater for what's happening? I mean, so I'm going to pass on to Mark, I think, and you know, if you could, I'm going to go back to the original question I had before. You give one piece of advice to business owners today on how they should make tactical decisions today to secure longevity, what would it be?
Okay, so again, I'm going to harp on about mindset. It's manage your mindset. Try as best you can to think like an investor in your own business. Many businesses will ignore the signs. They will be using hope as a strategy, and the chances are they won't be around in 6 months, 12 months time. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But what does that mean? If that means there's an opportunity to pick up market share. So I use this analogy. Anyone who's come along to any of our workshops in the past where we talk about business growth and the focal areas and the mindset and so on, give the analogy of, you know, you've got to wear two hats really. You've got to be the captain of the ship. So you're out on the bridge and looking ahead and where's the icebergs and what direction or what course do you need to take. And at the same time, it's also about managing the engine room. And really having that balanced view, so there's two perspectives. So just to give a bit of light to that, I spoke with an associate of mine yesterday who was quite shocked that a couple of his former colleagues had been let go by their company. He said they're two of the most talented individuals he knows. They're real strategists, brilliant minds, and he said the company has been so short-sighted to let these guys go because they're on a high salary. What they have got is the capability, the understanding to take that business through what it needs to do, like pivoting the services, like building a strategy for growth. They had that foresight. But the ownership of the business, the business leaders have not viewed that. They're in panic mode and they're like, no, we need just to make sure that we cut back and have the core staff that can generate revenue today. So they've lost the valuable asset in that situation, and that's quite common. So really understanding that perspective and making sure you're thinking like an investor and being long-term is probably the best bit of advice I can give you, rather than just trying to deal with only what's in front of you right now.
Yeah, I think wise words, to be honest. You know, it's making those decisions without making them as a panic decisions. And, you know, if you're stripping out the staff who are the key assets and drivers of your business because you can't afford to pay the salaries, you don't have a business left. So I think that's quite key, what Mark's saying, you know, especially if you're looking to pivot your business as well. So Harry, I'm going to ask the same question to you, but focus it around what's your one piece of advice to give to business owners to help them stay ahead of the curve? Yeah,
and again, it's those last couple of slides we've got really. So it's I think the second to last slide that was there. Oh, that's the baby. So yeah, so first thing is, for all the business owners out there and the managers and directors, cut yourself some slack. Yeah, as we were saying, the UHY guys have been absolutely brilliant pulling all this stuff together at such short notice, and a lot of the stuff here is done in depth. Now, to go through that process, as Stuart and Marie and Emma and the team behind it will attest, we've been through this thing. You know, we're constantly in a space of, are we focusing on details or are we focusing on the big picture? Are we in scarcity and worried about our jobs and our businesses and our future, or are we in confidence where we're thinking, yeah, actually there's an opportunity here and let's get on with it? Be careful how you monitor that and just be aware of yourself. And again, like Stuart and Emma said, use your teams, use your network, because you will get to a stage of desperation. We've all been in it. And you will have to deal with how do you put your business online and do it different, all the rest of it. So just be aware of, when you're making business decisions, can you get yourself perhaps into the detail or the big picture, but in confident, and think about things that will help you do that. We were talking before and Stuart gave me a brilliant example, which was, the issue is, if you lose 10% of your client base, and that's the wrong 10% particularly, but say you're losing 10% of your client base, which is the analysis that we do and UHY have done on their client base, that could be all their profit. Now, the fact is, the last thing you want to do at the moment, and this is, again, we've been talking to a lot of firms, and a lot of them are not picking the phone up to their clients because they're scared to deal with it. So they've let themselves, they are in a position of scarcity and detail where they're counting paper clips when they should be doing what Stuart's talking about, which is secure your profit. So do the hard maths, go through the hard conversations, talk to all your clients, so that the ones that are adding you profit and really going to be there going forward, you love them and they love you and you support them. Because it's ever so easy to keep thinking, yeah, well, I'll do that tomorrow. Yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. Well, that's your 10% profit gone. So that was the, that's the big picture one. So run that little framework over where you are making decisions. And then quickly to finish it off is that last slide. And again, this is quite a simple one. All you guys have covered it before, really. The issue is we're at home. I'm in the garden shed. Yeah, I'm in my posh office. Yeah, I'm sat here in the shed. Yes, this morning I'm having a conversation with the wife who's going, oh yeah, we've got enough toilet rolls now, but next door, they've had their van broken into and all their food's been nicked. So 1 minute we're in that space of fear and detail. The next minute we're supposed to be a decision maker for the business. So again, cut yourself some slack, get some perspective. Are you running a good intent is the first question. Have you got perspective? Have you set expectations? So in this one here, what that diagram says is, when you step into the office, if you can, let go of the fact that, that you are a parent and a mum and dad and, a daughter and a son, all that stuff. Let go of all that personal stuff, even let go of some of the community stuff, and just focus, like Emma was saying and Stuart was saying, on what do we do so our business has the best chance of survival. And it's ever so easy to wear the wrong hat. Yeah, and the stuff that when we do that as business owners in the good times, trusting our gut instinct and then our feelings and the thinking, that works really well for taking care of opportunities. But sometimes being in that personal space, in that family space, doesn't always work when we're trying to make hardcore business decisions that will move us all forward.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harry. So I think just to wrap that up is making sure that you're in the right mindset and you're wearing the right hat when you're making these business critical decisions. So we've got quite a few questions that have come through. I've been answering some of those as we've been going along, but I'm just going to do a quick sort of 5 minutes or so Q&A covering the questions that have come in. So there's quite a lot around the job retention scheme. So keep in mind that this scheme has only come out on Friday, so there are going to be some details that we simply don't know, but we'll try and answer some of your questions now. So Emma, I'm going to direct this at you. Can staff who, can they do an alternative job once they've been marked as furloughed?
No, they're still employed by the employer. So if they're furloughed, they have to stay at home and get their 80% of salary, but they can't then go and work for someone else whilst they're furloughed. So it's furloughed, or the alternative is if they don't want to be employed, then they'd have to resign in the normal fashion. But no, they can't work for someone else while they're furloughed.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And also, if they have, say, flexible time, so they're paid on like a basic hours plus overtime, does the scheme cover just their basic hours, or does it cover the overtime and stuff as well? I'm not sure if you will know this yet.
I can't say with 100% certainty exactly what it will cover and what it won't, and whether it will include bonus and commission and overtime. But there isn't enough guidance on that at the moment, so I'm sorry, I just can't answer it.
Okay, no, that's fine. I appreciate it. There's going to be more guidance coming out. So just to let our audience, as more guidance comes out, we will be releasing more information and try and answer some of these questions, because you guys aren't the only ones that are asking this kind of a question as well. So I think this question kind of covers Mark, actually. If you've got staff that are underperforming, would you consider furloughing them or firing them?
Okay, well, I think the important thing is, as mentioned before, is take a detailed look. Don't rush in. Look at what the business requires today, So, you know, there's three lenses really to look at this. There's capability. So do they have the capability to do the job, and is that job currently relevant at the moment? Is there the capacity to do the work as well? Well, at the moment, everyone's working from home, so that's a fairly straightforward answer. And the other thing is attitude. You know, with hard times upon us, if you've got a team that are willing and able and have the desire and you can trust them to do the job, then they're the sort of people you want alongside you, aren't you? The longer term thing is to start thinking about, you know, how are you going to look after these people going forward? During the last recession, what happened was a lot of employers just really worked their teams very, very hard, and some of the people that were there were, you know, the expectations were very high on them, and they felt they were in a position that they couldn't move because, well, there were very few jobs out there. But what happened as soon as the market turned, they left and they took all that knowledge and capability with them. So think about people in the long term, not just in the short term. Make sure that they're ticking those boxes of capability, capacity, and attitude, and just make sure that you spend proper amount of time thinking through that rather than making quick judgments.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mark. And I'm going to direct this question at Stuart. It's about the job retention scheme. Is the 80% of the government are funding, is that respect of the gross salary or the net salary?
That's off the gross salary.
Okay. Nice and quick. Okay. And is the portal open yet for the job retention?
My understanding is it is not open yet, so we're still waiting. But there's nothing stopping you guys going through the process and putting those people on furlough immediately.
Okay. Okay. There's still quite a few questions that have come in. What we'll do is we'll make sure we respond to all of your questions in the follow-up to this webinar. I'm just going to now wrap up and just say thanks very much for your time to the panel experts and for your time at home. I'd just like to say there's some handouts I think that you can download off the back of this. We'll be sending a recording of this video, this webinar, so if you want to share that with your colleagues or watch it again. And finally, I would just like to say stay safe, stay healthy, and we wish you all the best. I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.